The house on Willow Street had stood abandoned for decades, shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of terror. It was a place where no one dared to tread, except for a few brave souls who ventured near its crumbling facade, only to flee in terror. The legends that surrounded the house spoke of the shadow people who dwelled within, entities that thrived in darkness, watching, waiting. Molly had heard the stories as a child, sitting around campfires with friends, spooking one another with tales of things that lurked in the shadows. But she had grown older and more skeptical, dismissing the legends as mere superstition. That was until the day she inherited the house. It was an inheritance that came unexpectedly. A distant relative she barely knew had left her the property. She had no intention of moving in but decided to visit out of curiosity. The house loomed before her, a looming presence against the darkening sky, as if it were absorbing the light. She hesitated at the threshold but summoned the courage to unlock a creaking front door. The air inside was heavy with dust and the musty scent of age. Cobwebs draped like forgotten memories in every corner. The place was a time capsule, filled with forgotten belongings and a sense of abandonment. As Molly wandered through the rooms, the floorboards creaked beneath her feet, whispering secrets long buried. As night fell, Molly lit a single candle in the living room. She didn't believe in ghosts, but the isolation of the house and the shadows that danced on the walls gave her an uneasy feeling. She decided to stay just for the night, curious to see if anything unusual would happen. Molly settled into a musty old armchair, clutching a worn book she had found on a dusty shelf. It was a diary, its pages yellowed with age. As she read, the entries told the story of a family who had once lived here. Their lives had been filled with happiness, but the last entry was different. It was a desperate plea for help, describing strange occurrences and sinister figures that seemed to emerge from the wall. Molly couldn't help but shiver as she read. She turned to glance around the room, half expecting to see those shadowy figures lurking in the corners. But there was nothing there, just the flickering candlelight casting eerie silhouettes. With a dismissive laugh, Molly put the diary down and tried to shake off the unease. She decided to head to bed and get some rest. But as she climbed the creaky stairs and entered the bedroom, she couldn't ignore the sensation of being watched. She scanned the room, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. She lay down in the ancient bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Just her imagination, she told herself. But as she closed her eyes, she heard a whisper, faint and distant, like the sighing of the wind. It was a voice, soft and haunting, repeating a single word, "Leave." Molly's eyes snapped open, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was shrouded in darkness, the candle having long burned out. She tried to dismiss the voice as a dream, but as she lay there, she became aware of movement in the room. Shadows seemed to shift and coalesce, forming vague, indistinct shapes. She watched in horror as the shadows grew more defined, taking on the semblance of human figures. The room was filled with them, countless shadowy forms, standing at the foot of her bed, lining the walls. Their eyes, or what seemed like eyes, glowed with an eerie, malevolent light. Molly couldn't move, couldn't scream. Paralyzed with fear, she watched as the shadow people drew closer. They seemed to reach out for her, their fingers elongated and twisted, like skeletal claws. And then, with a sudden, chilling intensity, They enveloped her. Their touch was like ice, sending shockwaves of terror through her body. Molly struggled, gasping for breath as if the very air around her had turned to poison. The shadows whispered in a language she couldn't understand, a cacophony of voices that echoed in her mind. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time lost all meaning as Molly was trapped in a nightmare. She could feel the darkness seeping into her, invading her thoughts, her memories. It was as if the shadow people were draining her of everything that made her human. But then, in the depths of her despair, a glimmer of hope flickered. Molly remembered the diary, the desperate plea for deliverance. With every ounce of her remaining strength, she summoned those words to her lips and whispered them into the darkness. "Deliver me from the shadow people." As the words left her mouth, the room seemed to tremble. The shadow people recoiled, their forms wavering and dissolving into the darkness. It was as if the words had the power to banish them, to break their hold on her. Molly gasped for breath, her body drenched in sweat. The room was empty once more, the shadows gone. It was as if they had never been there. She couldn't explain what had just happened, but she knew one thing for certain. She had come face to face with something beyond her understanding, something ancient and malevolent. With trembling hands, Molly gathered her belongings and fled the house on Willow Street. She never returned, but the memory of that night would haunt her for the rest of her days. She had learned that some legends, no matter how unbelievable, held a kernel of truth. The shadow people were real, and they were a terror unlike any other, lurking in the darkness, waiting for their next victim.